Thank you for joining us today for the webinar on speeding up your approval processes with Nintex and the DocuSign Connector. My name is Eileen Tand and I'm the Field Marketing Manager for Asia Pacific. I'll pass it on to Chris Ellis, who will take you our Nintex Technical Evangelist, and he will take you through the webinar today. Over to you, Chris.
Thank you very much. So as Eileen said, I am a technical evangelist working out of Melbourne here for Nintex. So today's webinar, we're going to show you how to speed up approval processes with DocuSign and Nintex. Obviously, based on the SharePoint platform as well, we'll be using workflow, we'll be using forms, we'll be using mobile devices. So just for anyone out there wondering what tech I'm also using as well, so I'll be using a Samsung S5 for any of the mobile aspects of it. I'll be using a Microsoft Surface for anything laptop based. I'll be working off SharePoint 2013 on-prem and the Nintex Forms and Workflow product. Just to show you that cross-browser, cross-platform supported as well. So we'll be looking to provide seamless and secure means of capturing electronic signature, which is something that businesses are faced with day in, day out today, whether that's across publishing documents externally for which to gather electronic signature back in, or within your organization ourselves, such as I know here at Nintex for any remuneration documentation that goes out, we do actually use the DocuSign Connector and Nintex as well. So we practice what we preach. A little bit about Nintex, if you don't know who we are already. We have over 5,000 customers worldwide with over 8 million licensed Nintex users. We're a partner ecosystem, so we use partners with which to engage with the wider audience. We've got 1,100 partners worldwide. Here in Australia, we've got somewhere around 30 on board, and we've built in over 22 languages now, which is great for that global side of things as well. So we a little bit, not everyone will know, but we're actually the winner of the 2015 Microsoft Partner of the Year for Office and SharePoint application development, which is something that we're very proud of here. Founded in Australia in 2004, should have probably mentioned that as well, with now major offices around the world: Melbourne, Seattle, London, Dubai, KL, and Tokyo. So why Nintex? Well, we now have content which is growing rapidly in all forms, all external applications as well as on-prem. We've got SharePoint, OneDrive, CRM, Salesforce on-premise, but also we're extending that outside of the business to areas such as social feeds, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and so on, as well as those corporate applications and places where your users might be storing data. We're also engaging with our external audience far more, and as a result of that, we need the processes to be a lot quicker and a lot more efficient. And that's the aim of our Nintex platform, is to engage with those either internally or externally, but increase efficiency and introduce those efficiencies across the board electronically. So to think of the platform that we have, it's probably best to split it up into four different pillars, so to speak, but they all work as a unified solution, and that's what we'll try and get the message we'll get across in the demo today, is that okay, you know, we do have different products in the product suite, but they work so seamlessly together as a solution. So Nintex processes, so processes there is our workflow product, and we'll go a little deeper into that as we go through. Forms, if you've used SharePoint, you'll know how vanilla and boring those SharePoint forms are. So what we allow to do is a distinction of that and an extension of those SharePoint forms. Mobility, you just need to look around a room and these days and you see just how surgically attached everybody is to their mobile phones. This is where that mobile workforce message comes through thick and strong with Nintex Mobile. And the connectors, so DocuSign is just one example of those connectors. We have 145 different Nintex Live connector actions across a gambit of different applications, and we will touch on that as well. Cool, so Nintex workflow, as you can see from the screenshot there, it's heavily integrated with SharePoint. So it's ribbon-based, it's for the on-prem, it's just a SharePoint solution which you install. For 365, it's just a store app that you download. No need for separate infrastructure here. Very easily licensed model as well. Drag and drop, icon-based. The idea here is empowering your end users and your SharePoint champions to actually be able to build your own workflow, thus freeing up IT staff to actually deliver value, taking away from some of those more mundane tasks which ordinarily would be cracking open possibly Visual Studio, SharePoint Designer to actually get any sort of business value out of autonomy on-prem or on 365. Nintex Forms uses very much, from the visual there, uses very much a similar UI to the workflow product. Again, it's drag and drop. So what that lets us do is it lets us quickly and easily create forms for everyone and every device, and that was kind of touch on what I mentioned earlier around cross-platform, cross-browser as well. And ultimately, we're looking at increasing user adoption and also introduce those efficiencies where we're not using paper-based forms. We're able to get a proper audit around them. We're able to get things like validation, so we ensure that the information is good that's coming in originally, rather than have to correct ourselves, and essentially reduce those paper-based processes. Nintex Mobile. So with Nintex Mobile, this is giving our workforce the ability to access any workflows and process automation, as well as forms and tasks that we have within our SharePoint environment. Publishes nice and easily to either the Nintex Mobile application, which is a free download from all the usual suspect stores, as well as Nintex Mobile Enterprise, which gives you that white label mobile application, which you can brand yourself and then release to the workforce. And finally, the Nintex connectors. So these are Nintex live actions. As I said, we have over 145 of them. They tend to follow the create, read, update, and delete action set, which allows us to kind of pull information and also talk back to applications which ordinarily would have been unavailable to our organization or would have required quite a lot of extra coding. We can just simply download from the store and drag and drop across as well into our workflows. And some news that not everyone maybe on the call who does know Nintex historically will be aware of. We have recently purchased DrawLoop. So DrawLoop is a Salesforce document generation application, and we'll be hoping to introduce those DrawLoop actions within the coming months, and you'll start seeing them pop up, which will allow document generation from not only Salesforce but also other CRM systems, as well as more holistic document generation as well. And that's some great news within the Nintex company. And just if you're stuck for food for thought around use cases that Nintex is great for, something, just one or two examples of what we're seeing our partners and also our clients implementing Nintex Forms, Workflow, and Mobile for today. So the message really is those everyday tasks, workflow for everyone, everywhere, and that's kind of our motto. And you'll see from these fairly straightforward use cases that if we start working across these, across the organization, there's some serious ROI to be had there, increasing efficiencies and freeing up staff to do far more business value tasks. But today we're going to be talking about the DocuSign Connector, and I want to highlight a use case out of Sydney. Broughton Capital have been using the DocuSign Connector to great effect. What they found was that clients were showing great interest when they were in meetings, but then possibly dropping off as the process to onboard them went through. So what they've done is they've actually, using DocuSign, they're able to strike while the iron's hot, send a proposal or a invoice across during the meetings, have them read and review that, and use DocuSign to actually complete the process and close the loop. Then off the back of that, they're possibly able to invite them to Office 365 sites using Nintex Actions, and actually really build that customer engagement up. That use case is on our website if you want more information. So why DocuSign, and who is DocuSign? So DocuSign is a global e-signature company. They were established in 2003, and they are actually the world leader in that e-signature transaction management space. With over 40 million users worldwide, they have over 60,000 new users join every day, which is quite astounding. And it's also available. Documents being signed in over 190 countries. And the majority of the Fortune 500, I think it's 90%, are actually using DocuSign actively to do their electronic signature. And you see from that last point there, we've touched on that. Really helps accelerate those the transaction time when you're talking about electronic document signature. We're not emailing a document to somebody to then print out, wet sign, scan it, upload it back into an email, and then send back. Multiply that by however many times you actually have to do this, as well as the increased cost in paper, printing, ink, and so on. The ability with which to actually sign a document, even through a mobile phone, is, the costs can be realized quite quickly. The DocuSign Connector, the Nintex Connector, sorry, for DocuSign, really easy to use. So we have 5 different connectors, which I'll show you all 5 today. Quick and easy to download from the Nintex store, which is also integrated within that SharePoint Workflow Designer ribbon. Just some of the examples on the left-hand side that we've seen some of these no-code solutions implemented for. And like I said, we use it ourselves and internally for any remittance or any contract signing, as well as employee onboarding. So I know my contract came out with a DocuSign this area to sign and return. So I wasn't having to print out any documents from home or go to Officeworks or bother a friend to use their printer. It was quite seamless. So the 5 actions that we have, essentially we will touch on these. We have the ability to send an in SharePoint document up to DocuSign to handle. We also have the ability to, through a DocuSign account, we have the ability to actually populate a template that is up there with just wildcards within it. And we can also use Office Quick Parts in order to populate those documents on-prem or 365 SharePoint as well. And the other actions are really querying that envelope status. So in order to help our workflow get through the stages, DocuSign has what it calls an envelope with which it uses to identify which stage that transaction with that document is actually in. Cool. So now for the fun stuff. I'll just grab my demo environment and bring it into my other window, if you could just bear with me. Excellent. Okay. What we have here is just a SharePoint 2013 on-prem environment, and we have an NDA signature list. Also on my site, I have a pre-made NDA. It's just in a document library there in the background, and my scenario is that I'm sat with a client and we're discussing some new product that I would like to release to market. They've shown some interest, but in order for them to actually get some more information, I'm going to need them to sign an NDA with me. Cool. So what I'll do in this scenario, I've got my Surface here, but my client doesn't have a laptop with them. So they're on the Samsung, I'm on my Surface. So we've had our discussion, and what we want to now do is send them the NDA for them to sign, for them to return to me, in order for me to actually be able to release those, release that NDA information, release that product information, sorry, to them. So I'll just start a new item within my SharePoint list. What we have here is a Nintex form as well. So anyone that hasn't seen Nintex forms, when I created the demo, I had a fairly vanilla SharePoint item form in front of me. So through the use of Nintex forms, I've actually now got a branded form, which took maybe 5 seconds for which Nintex to convert that content type. And I can actually play with that. Nintex forms, for more information on that, probably, yeah, best to check out one of the YouTube videos. We won't dive into that functionality today. So John Smith is my attendee, and let's just send John an email. And we don't need to attach anything, because the actual workflow is going to pick up that demo, that NDA template, and it's going to send that to John. So I'll just save that. So we've got my list here. So attendees email NDA, that's going to tell me exactly where in my workflow we are. So what I'll do, I'll show you a nice feature of Nintex Nintex workflow here. I just view the item. Let's just view that workflow history. So through this graphical representation of the workflow, and this is exactly what the designer looks like when we jump into that, we can see at which stage we're at. So the green, we've passed those stages. It's set the 2 variables that I need, and it's also changed the workflow status to sending. It's sitting here with DocuSign now, so DocuSign is doing some work in the background. It's creating an envelope ID. It's also grabbing that template that I had, and it's preparing to send that on to my client. So I'll just grab my mobile phone renderer here, which I have got Outlook on there, if you just bear with me. Okay, let's just enlarge this. Cool. So it's just the Outlook app on the Samsung. I've got a new email. So delivered at 1:20, sample NDA. So Chris, that's myself at Nintex. I've just sent John Smith a document to review. So he receives an email from DocuSign telling him that there's a document to review and sign, tells it who it's from, and we can actually customize this message through the DocuSign account as well. So we can add some more messaging to that. But I just want to review this document. So this is part of DocuSign's auditing, and this is kind of why it stands up from a legal point of view, is that you've had an email with a link delivered to your mobile, but you're also consenting to the use of electronic records and signatures as well. So this forms part of DocuSign's audit trail, in which you can't put your hands up and say, I had absolutely zero knowledge of this, somebody else must have signed on my behalf. So review the document. I've got a fairly generic confidentiality agreement here. You'll see at the top it now has an envelope ID stamp. So this is again as part of that DocuSign audit trail, where we're having a very unique identifier for that document. It's the process. So I could have pre-populated this as well from that SharePoint list. I could have had quick parts in my template, just to pre-populate that. As it stands, this is just blank. But what DocuSign gives my client to be is the ability to actually insert different values or even blank text if it hasn't picked up. So it knows from my SharePoint list item that my name is John Smith. Let's just move that up a little bit. But I could have filled in an address, sorry, wrong area. Let's just grab this. So company wasn't information that we had, but if I use the company tag here, I should be able to pre-populate that. Let's just go. Nice and original. If I scroll down, I have a signature panel here as well. So the recipient signature. Now what it's going to ask me to do is actually sign that document. So I'll just rotate the emulator here. Now I have a few options. Apologies if that's blown out quite significant. I can sign this here as John. So I'm just signing on the device. So I've got my Samsung in hand. Let's just do J Smith. Apologies for the left-handed scroll. So I'm happy with that. Let's adopt and sign. Now if I had a DocuSign account as John Smith, if I was a paid user for DocuSign, I could actually store a signature on there, store initialing and so on. As it stands, John is just a general, everyday John Smith, Joe Blogs user. Okay, so I'm happy with that. I've signed it. Maybe we'll add the date in as well. Date signed. Cool. Let's finish. And now it gives me some nice architecture. So we notice you haven't actually got a DocuSign account, John, but would you like one? Would you like to sign up now? I'm happy enough just being a general user at the moment, but thanks very much, DocuSign. So we'll move that out of the way. So meanwhile, while I was doing that, the Nintex workflow has actually moved on several stages. Now that it's been signed and sent back, you can see we're now through the green here. We've logged that into a history list, which is just helping us keep a bit more of an audit trail. We've grabbed that envelope status, and now we're at a state machine where, depending on what the result of that was, we're going to go down one of several branches. Now, this one completed, but he very well could have declined that. Perhaps it was a job offer and they weren't happy with the remittance. If they decline it and send it back, we can actually decide what's going to happen with that document and with those actions after that. So maybe we want to escalate that back to the manager who's hiring, and they want to maybe review the salary and then republish that document. So a few other things happened as well while we were signing that document. Chris, the originator, actually received an email from DocuSign here to say that John had viewed that sample NDA. So already we're getting that audit trail to know that, look, John has actually viewed it. Maybe if that stays in this situation for a few days, we might want to chase up with him. But again, that's something we can add to the workflow as well, is that kind of that loop to check back. And then John signed the document. So what I also got from DocuSign, not only did I get the status change here that it's been completed, and I can jump into my DocuSign account to check that. I also got it sent as an attachment, which is great because I can then either just straight from email, I can forward that on. But what my workflow is actually doing as well, as we enter this state machine, it's been completed. So it's going to jump into my completion branch here, and it's actually going to download that document from DocuSign, and then it's going to move that into another SharePoint list or library. So I've got that closed loop on the document. I also have the ability to move that through the organization, through our also through our Nintex actions. I can convert that to PDF if it was a Word document that came in. Lucky enough, DocuSign has sent us the PDF, so that's quite good. I can also view some stats on my workflow as well. So I can see things like durations. I get some pretty good reporting around this. I can see how many occurrences we're using those actions for, when they're failing, and so on. And as a user, as John Smith, just to finalize, I'll pull the emulator back across. Oops, apologies for anyone that's, okay. It also sends me, as John, it sends me back a copy of that as well. So I'm closing the loop on that document life cycle. So I've got a copy, my client now has a copy, and it's back in my on-prem SharePoint environment. Fantastic. So we've done through mobile. We've also used SharePoint on-prem. We can close this down for now. Cool. So let's actually see what those workflow actions look like. So I'll jump into my NDA signature here through the list. I'll click on Nintex on workflow settings, manage workflows. Here we go. Okay, I'll try and zoom out a bit so we get a little bit more context. Hopefully that's not too small for everybody. We have some stock standard best practice workflow actions at the start. So just going to set our workflow status here to start it and grab a few variables. So the variables that we're going to need that document that we're sending to DocuSign. And we're also changing the file name as well. So just to make it something nice and generic, we're just calling it NDA so that that appears within the email that the user gets. So the DocuSign actions here, they're all quite nicely identified with the logo. Now, how did we get those DocuSign actions? Well, up here within Nintex workflow, we've got a catalog. And what that catalog does is that opens up your Nintex workflow world to 145 or so other actions from external applications. So you'll see here we've got Amazon, we've got Bing, we have Bitly URLs, we've got Box, we've got the DocuSign ones here, and I'll jump into them once we get back into the designer. We have Dropbox, Dynamics CRM, Exchange Online, Facebook, Google Drive, LinkedIn, MailChimp, a few Azure actions as well, which is great, spinning up images and so on, download the RDP files. Quite a few Office 365 actions, which is really good for that hybrid model that we've seen quite a lot of now. With the introduction of 365 and the ramp up of adoption, a lot are using these 365 actions to have that hybrid scenario as well. So we'll scroll through these. These are all available either through the trial, so you can grab a trial on Nintex from the nintex.com website, and more information about these live actions as well. So OneDrive, Rackspace, Salesforce connectors as well. So I'll probably won't bore you with too much more of this, as well as SharePoint Online. And let's just close out with Twitter and Yammer. Cool. But what I essentially did, I got my DocuSign actions, so they are all populated, but as an example, I'll show you on this. I came in, clicked on Add, tells me it's pending, OK that. It's going to update my available action set. And then if I jump down here to Nintex Live, my actions are now available. They're good to go. My new Yammer one here, I can just drag and drop it into my workflow wherever I want it to be. Let's just delete that. It doesn't really make sense in that context. Cool. But I have my 5 DocuSign actions. So I've got DocuSign download a document, which is when it grabs that document from DocuSign. So what the Nintex workflow service does is it just pulls DocuSign a fairly regular schedule to say, hey, are you finished with that document? Has the envelope status changed? in order for me to pull that document down to my SharePoint environment. I don't have to download the document as a DocuSign account holder. I'll show you what that profile looks like in a bit. I can leave it up there if I want to, but it's nice to close the loop. It's nice to have anything that's pertaining to my company actually within my company. Populate template, so I can store my templates within DocuSign. I can just publish information from a SharePoint item, grab them in a variable, and then just send them to a predefined template within DocuSign. Means I'm not storing anything on my SharePoint environment until maybe I decide to bring them back down. The DocuSign retrieve envelope status, so we saw that one in the workflow. That's essentially just checking if that has actually changed, so we can then move on with that life cycle. DocuSign send document, that's what we did in the NDA scenario. It's where we had a document on-prem or on 365, and we sent that to DocuSign for our end user to then sign and return. And the DocuSign send envelope, so we're just sending an envelope status up to DocuSign for a transaction to take place. Cool. So let's have a look at the send document action and what configuration we can do on that as well. The first thing it's going to ask me for is a connection. I'll actually cancel out this and show you what that looks like. So we have a connection manager here. So we need to create a DocuSign connection. What I've mentioned, having a DocuSign profile or a DocuSign account, we have a DocuSign account that allows us to carry out these actions. Now you can have one per organization and you can apply it holistically throughout that site scope. Once it's set up with the username and password, hit test. It will do a quick check with DocuSign to see that everything's valid, and it returns the little green tick there. And now I can use that within any DocuSign action. So I'm not logging into DocuSign every time I have to carry out an action. That would be very tedious for your end users. Cool. So I've actually put in my connection there. What's the URL? So this is grabbing that variable that I created before. It's just what's the document that I'm actually sending to DocuSign, as well as the file name. Recipient is the information within my list, so I don't actually need a SharePoint library for this, even though we're playing with documents. I'm just using a simple list item. What's the subject? We saw that within the Samsung Outlook app. That's what John received, and I can tidy up this email message as well through the use of the references as well. If it wasn't as simple an application as just an NDA, if it was a little bit more complex and a slightly more padded out item, we can actually build build wildcards into that message, so that whatever we've got that mentality of build once. So we've got one standard email, but we can insert unique references into that. And then we're grabbing that envelope ID into another workflow variable. So let's move on. We're changing our status here. We're logging an action in the history list. It's probably a slightly overlooked workflow action, but it's great for us just to report on exactly where we are and what we're gathering through that item workflow. So we've grabbed the envelope ID. We're reporting that back into an audit history list that we can view just in case it's broken, in case it's taking too long. It easily identifies where we're at. Next up is the retrieve envelope status. So this is when it just does a bit of a pull to see if that status has changed, and then off the back of that status change, we would then move our workflow through. So what's the status? Is it complete, or was it declined or voided by the end user that received it? And there may well be a reason within that as well. So we can actually do that within the DocuSign. When John was reviewing that message, he had an other actions up there in the top right. One of his options there was to actually decline that. If he wasn't happy with what was in that NDA, he can decline it, send it back with a message. We can grab that message and the status and report back through our workflow. We're logging a completion here. So again, what was the status of that envelope returned? Was it complete? Was it declined, or was it voided? And off the back of that, we're jumping into a state machine here. So from our state machine, we're initiating, we're going to go to completed because that one was completed. We then download the document. So we're downloading that from DocuSign. Thank you very much, DocuSign. We're going to download that to the current item, so to John Smith's item, and we're going to attach that to the item as a PDF. Then we exit out of that. Now, had it been declined, we may well have had other actions, and here all we're doing in this one is deleting John Smith's record from the item. As far as we're concerned, John doesn't want to play ball with us. He's not going to sign the NDA, so we're just going to delete him from that SharePoint list, do some tidy up. We may well have added something separate in from void, and if it was declined, we might have escalated that through the use of the, maybe escalated it to my manager to follow up with John to see if he needs any information or help, or if there's maybe something we can do to onboard him. And off the back of the completion one, yeah, we've seen implementations that have actually created an Office 365 account for that user and then added them into an Office 365 site, say pertaining to that product that John and I were discussing. I can publish information for that product, possibly proof of concepts or user manuals, onto my 365 site, and John has access to that all within a single onboarding workflow, which is great. Cool. So I'll just close out of my workflow designer. And I'll jump into my process NDA signature just to give you an overview of a slightly different flavor of this workflow in action. Exactly the same scenario, but what this workflow is doing is instead of using the send document, what I have is I have a template stored within DocuSign. So new item, same scenario. Let's use Joe Blogs this time, another nice generic email, Nintex demo at outlook.com, and let's get that sent up to Joe. Let's just have a quick look to see how that's actually progressing. And you'll see it looks slightly different. So from these collection operations here at the start, we're grabbing the attendee name, the current date, and Joe's full name as well. And we're sending them up to populate this DocuSign template. We're then changing the status within that item to sent, and then we're going to retrieve this envelope status within DocuSign, and we just run it until, yeah, we haven't actually received a response. Let's jump back. Okay. So the DocuSign actions take maybe a minute or so to process. Cool. So we now have this please sign NDA. Joe, let's review that document. So this scenario is using a DocuSign stored template. Same again. So what we're doing now is we're going to do some Chrome rather than the mobile device. Continue. Under my other actions, I can actually decline to sign it. So this is what I was talking about. That's going to send that decline message back to SharePoint to go another branch in my workflow. I can print it and sign it later if I want to still go through that wet signature. But yeah, the real ability is within that sign. You can see it's already grabbed my variables that I put in there. So my item values, Joe Blogs, today the 27th. And it's pre-populated with just a signature. So all I need to do is sign. I'm not even grabbing actions here. So using the template gives us that ability. So I've got a few options here as well. So I can actually adopt a signature as Joe. I'm happy enough with that one. Or let's try this with the mouse. I'm not entirely sure how it's going to go. Looks like a 3-year-old's done it. Cool. Adopt and sign. So there's my signature. Yep, I signed it. Let's finish that. Again, it's going to ask us to sign up. And as before, I've received in my Outlook, I've been told that Joe Bloggs has viewed it. Great. And that Joe Bloggs has signed it. And the same has gone back to Joe's Outlook. He signed it and he's viewed it. Or he signed it, sorry. Okay. So let's see what that DocuSign account options actually give us. Let's have a look at DocuSign. As an account holder, what can I actually do? What's available to me outside of my Nintex workflow actions? What does having a DocuSign account allow me to do up there? And it's quite a good experience on here. Okay, so this is my home page on my DocuSign account. So as a fully paid up member, I can see which documents have actually got action outstanding on them, and because we use this for demo, there's not going to be too much. I can click on all documents, so I can see those transactions that have come in and out. So we should see John's or Joe's in here while it thinks about it. Yep, so we've got Joe's, we've got John's. So yeah, we can have a look to see. We can move things around. We can actually delete if we want to do some housekeeping, which is great. We can also see what's outstanding. If we're waiting for any, there may be nothing in here, but some of the demos might have stopped. Yep, so we've got a few here that we're waiting for some action to be had on them. If we jump into my templates, so this is where I can upload a pre-built template. So the Crest and NDA was the one that we just used there with Joe. Let's have a look at that. Stock standard Word document, which we upload. Then we decide through the use of DocuSign which DocuSign action. So is it signatory? Is it an initial? Is it the date stamp? Where do we want them within that template? And then yeah, new template. We just build that. We import that from a Word document, and then let our DocuSign actions do the rest. And then we have some reporting, some stock standard reporting through DocuSign. What's my completion rate like? That's something that we might want to review, given that we're only at 60%. Maybe we need to introduce some efficiencies into our workflow. Maybe we need to start doing some reminders or escalations. It's quite a good indicator of just how successful we're being with that. Cool. Okay, so DocuSign aside, I'll come out of SharePoint now, and one of the I guess one of the most common questions that I've been asked whenever I've presented the DocuSign stuff, especially, is what's the legality? Yeah, why does this stand up in court? Why should I adopt e-signature outside of the efficiencies? But we're a little bit worried about governance here at Company X. So DocuSign, they go to great lengths to actually prove their ability within that space. I mentioned earlier they are a world leader. They have reached the ISO 27001 standard, not only to clients, but also they practice that internally as well. All of this information is available on the DocuSign website, but they have some other pretty cool stuff. So they've got things like anti-tampering, and so a lot of the fields are actually locked out. So if I go back into a document that has been DocuSigned, there's no way for me to manipulate that. As well as different forms of verification. So we only really touched on signatory within the demo, but there is the option to obviously extend that far beyond. Being a cloud service as well, they do practice a 99.99% average uptime. And we saw there a lot of the audit trail stuff coming in there. So mean, I got an email delivered. I had to check a tick box to say that I accepted the terms and conditions. Then from all of the documents that we saw, we had an envelope ID, which is unique to that document, and all of these things in conjunction do make these documents legally admissible in court. And they do have case studies on their website where they basically talk through scenarios where this has happened, and electronic signature has saved the day on a few times. We've had a few questions on what's its legality within Australia as well. So for any of the Australian people on the call, it does abide to Australian data protection laws as well as our Nintex Office 365 offering. Same scenario. All right, so we've come to the end of the show and tell aspect of this. I guess some of the good resources that I do want to point out, obviously for a lot more information, not only on Nintex, but there's quite a bit of DocuSign info as well, is community.nintex.com. So this is not exclusive to our partner ecosystem. Anyone can log in for this. It has things like pre-canned solutions, demos, blogs from our technical evangelists, some great tutorials, and probably the best thing is that forum. So you can ask anything that you want on that forum. Not only have we got super users and the technical evangelists, we've also got senior members of our product team on there. So if it's information around what's up and coming, you can also use nintex.uservoice.com as well, which is what features do we want to see on here? Look, I've seen this in InfoPath, or I've seen this in something else. Does Nintex do it? It's another great site. But I do encourage anybody to jump on that community.nintex.com if you're having issues, as well as some of the usual suspects here as well around Facebook and so on. Oops, excuse me. And I think that is my second to last slide. As I mentioned before, nintex.com for a 30-day trial. So the trial product that you get is full enterprise, so you're all in. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, if you want to send me a technical email, any questions that you can't find either in the community or the website, feel free to reach out. That's kind of what I'm here for. So I'll jump in the chat window, have a look to see if we have any questions. Okay, we've got a few questions. Is there a separate cost for the live connectors for DocuSign? There is not, no. So it's included within the forms, within the workflow product that you purchase. There are two live connectors that do incur an extra charge: Dynamics CRM and Salesforce connectors. Everything else is included. You just jump onto that catalog, which is what we saw at the top of the workflow window, and then just hit add, which is what we did for, I think it was the Yammer one, if I recall. Cool. How does the licensing for DocuSign work? And that probably ties in as well with another question about, do we need to buy an account for DocuSign? In order to use those DocuSign actions, you need a profile. So you need something for DocuSign to talk back and forth with your SharePoint environment for. It's probably best to contact DocuSign for the costs, because they are published in US dollars. So if you're in Australia or elsewhere, there may be slightly different rates. As far as I know, it's a per monthly basis. What we have, we can use a site-wide license, so we only need to use one. For that entire scenario and my 365, I'm using just my chris.ellis at nintex.com account, and yeah, there is a monthly fee. I don't think it's extraordinary, and it certainly it's outweighed by the return on investment when you look at printing and ink and travel and wait time and so on. but it's probably best to contact DocuSign. The information's on their site as well. Can we embed signatures instead of drawing them? Absolutely. So again, in the second scenario that we saw, which was the templated NDA, it did give me a generic, as a public user, it gives me my name and it just does a generic signature version, and I just have to click add. I didn't necessarily need to use the pad. That was just to show that we use the touchpad. You can actually embed it if you have a DocuSign account. So if from Chris I was sending to say Joe or John and they had a DocuSign account, I could have a stored license, stored signature there, and I can just import that signature. Same as initials. I would obviously have had all my company details, my address, and so on. Okay. Where can I see a recording of this webinar? So the recording, I believe, is sent to every registered user on the call. So if you've registered your email address, a link with the recording should be sent out. If I'm wrong, I'm sure marketing are going to jump in fairly soon and correct me. I'm not wrong. Okay, how do you verify? Sorry. Anything, Eileen?
No, I was just going to say that you're absolutely correct. The recording will be sent out.
Spot on. Okay, and how do you verify and license for DocuSign for use by users outside the organization? E.g., a supplier has to sign an engagement contract or a new employee has to sign an employment contract. So yeah, the employment agreement is one that we use here. You don't need a DocuSign account for that. It essentially just grabs, uses the information that I have either put in through the SharePoint list. Say I'm HR, I have as much of that information as possible. The user can then either supply that through the use of, there is just a text field that you can put in DocuSign if you need further information, but licensing wise, public's free. So I used Joe and John. That was just an @outlook.com. They could be anywhere in the world. They're not in my organization. I don't need a license for them to sign. They don't need a license to sign anything. I need a license in order to send as an organization, but I can just use one across the entire site. So if I have several workflows that use DocuSign, I just need the one license for that. How can we become a Nintex Ninja? Any tutorial link? Probably the best place to start with that is nintex.com, grab a trial, get that into, then use community.nintex.com to search for install. There's an install guide there. All of our manuals are on there. Every single month where we release new actions and modifications to those actions, we publish that cool, exciting new stuff as well. But if you've got any technical issues, feel free to reach out at Chris Ellis at nintex.com. If you are an existing Nintex user, by all means use our support at nintex.com if you're having issues. But I think community or let me just jump back. We do have a few other links. So our YouTube channel has hundreds of we've got hundreds of videos up on YouTube as well, which is a great resource for how-tos. There's a lot of tutorials on there, a lot of pre-built solutions that some of our partners as well will show you how to run through. So yeah, all good. Nintex forms seem larger in KB. I'm going to guess that's kilobyte, not knowledge base, per content than InfoPath. Why is that? Not entirely sure. Do you mean the package to install it, or do you mean per form? XML files. Okay, I'm not entirely sure, but I can certainly can find out some information and publish that out to those registered on here. Do you need Nintex Live to be enabled on the server for DocuSign to work? Yes. The DocuSign actions, as well as the other 140 connectors, are all Nintex Live actions, so they sit in our Azure platform. Okay, we'll probably wrap up there. There's not much coming through. Thank you very much for your time and participation today, people. If you need any more information, I do encourage you to check out those links on the screen, and I will put up the community link one more time, which is a great resource as well. And I'll hand back to marketing to close. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Chris, and thanks everyone for joining us today. As mentioned, we will be sharing the recording and will be made available, so stay tuned for that in hopefully a week or so. Thanks everyone again, and we'll hope to see you at the next webinar. Goodbye.